I am back. Dude, I forgot to update the stream title for the mowing stream. Oh well. Give me 1 second. I'll update it. Because I did have the thumbnail. I just forgot. Well, I basically had a thumbnail that wasn't cropped right, and then I forgot to upload it because I was gonna re-upload it with the fixed crop, and then I just totally forgot. But anyway, I'll update it on YouTube because I'm gonna promote it for $3 over a week. All right, I got it almost uploaded. I'm uploading it. I'm changing the thumbnail to the fixed version. All right, there. All right, now before I get started, let's go back to my whiteboard, blackboard, whatever you want to fucking call it. All right, so, oh fuck. Let me pause this video. It's Amen 888. Somebody just commented on my video. Okay. Can you explain to an atheist how the theory we proposed earlier basically dictates how the coin has not even landed yet, so we don't know which side it's going to land on, but it's like one side of the coin is virtually not even possible to land on because he either always existed and exists or never existed and doesn't exist. So we just can't ever really know until the coin either lands that either A, he exists, or you will never know the coin landed on B because we will never know. How are you ever going to know that it lands on B if you don't witness it land on B? If you can't even witness it land on B. So you can propose and expect that it will land on B, but that's only your own guess. That's what you think is going to happen. That's not what you know is going to happen. Okay, so let's see how ChatGPT explains this. Yes, I would tighten the analogy so it makes your philosophical point without accidentally claiming the coin itself proves God exists. Exactly. We just don't really know which it is. Well, I mean, I personally think it's A, but it's not like it's universally accepted or everybody knows that it is A. Because, I mean, maybe it is B, and then maybe we will never know. But we'll never know if we never know. The strongest version is that our uncertainty is unresolved, while reality itself is not necessarily undecided. You could explain to an atheist like this. Think of the God question like a coin whose result you cannot see yet. From our perspective, the coin hasn't landed. We don't know the answer. I mean, you can say you know the answer, but you're basically trying to call a coin flip in the air. You don't know if it's actually going to land like that. But there are ultimately two possibilities. But reality holds the answer. Reality itself already knows if God exists or doesn't exist. It's either A, God exists, or B, God does not exist. Here's where it gets weird. So this is for an atheist. This is mostly written for an atheist, but it's also universally a good concept to, take in to consideration, because it's basically the solution to the problem that no one has been able to ever explain until I was able to explain it. If A is true and God is eternal by definition, then God didn't suddenly become real when we discovered him. He always existed. Yesterday, today, before humanity, before Earth, before the universe, whatever the ultimate beginning actually was, our discovery would only reveal something that was already true. But suppose B is true. God never existed. Then what exactly happens that allows humanity to observe the coin landing on B with absolute certainty? That's the paradox. If God exists, there is at least a conceivable event that could settle the argument. God reveals himself in some unmistakable, independently verifiable way. Coin lands A. But if God doesn't exist, there may never be an equivalent moment where reality announces, "Congratulations, you have now searched all existence, all dimensions, all possible hidden realities, all of space-time, and every possible explanation. God definitely isn't anywhere." Who the hell can search the whole fucking galaxy if the galaxy is fucking infinite? That's the point. You can't say you've searched the whole fucking galaxy without searching the whole fucking galaxy. Even if you search the whole galaxy, it's not like you're gonna know the answer for sure, because you can search an entire haystack and there may be a needle that's lost inside a tiny little haystack, and you may ultimately almost never find that needle by just looking through it without actually filtering every single thing in that haystack. So you'd have to filter through the whole existence of the universe and galaxy to even have a somewhat probable chance that you're even correct, given the fact that maybe you didn't miss anything. No revelation, no final announcement, no moment when the cosmic coin visibly lands. So it's like trying to find a needle in the haystack, but until you search the entire haystack, you don't even know if the needle is in there. So how can you say, well, I've searched the entire haystack without searching the haystack? That's what I'm trying to explain. You can't know something that you don't know. You can't do something you didn't do. You can't say that you did something that you didn't do. No moment when the cosmic coin visibly lands. So from the human observer's perspective, the two sides are epistemically asymmetric. A could potentially become directly knowable. B might remain in inference forever. And that's the part that bakes my noodle. Reality already has whatever answer it has. We just don't necessarily have access to it. My theory is God was waiting for somebody to find a solution to what everybody thinks there is not a solution to. Because everyone says, well, we have the solution, but at the same time, they don't have the solution. So it was basically a test by God. Well, who will actually find the right solution? Because you have all these different solutions, but only one solution is correct. And I propose my solution is the correct solution, because the other solutions I propose are not even actually solutions. They propose it is a solution. They propose that it is the solution, but that's why God was waiting and was going to reward who can find the actual real solution to the paradox, because it is what is known as a paradox. If God exists eternally, then he always existed and exists. If God doesn't exist, then he never existed and doesn't exist. Our uncertainty doesn't create a third possibility. We don't know describes the state. There is somewhat a third possibility. Now that I think about it, it's like the coin landing in the middle. So the third very unlikely possibility, which if the coin were to land in the middle, right side up, not landing on either side or the other, is either A or B. There's a duality, so it's like a four-sided coin. There are kind of four possible, actual, ultimate possibilities, but two of those possibilities of the four are almost certainly highly unlikely. Like, you wouldn't expect it to land like that. So the other two possibilities is God exists and then he died. So he created everything, and then all of a sudden now he doesn't exist. Now he died. So one moment he always existed, he created everything, and then he just died. Now he just doesn't exist. That wouldn't make sense, because I think my theory is if he always existed, the probability that he's not gonna exist or die becomes infinitely, basically unprobabilistic. Virtually, it's impossible, because he always already existed. He already existed for infinite amounts of duration. Okay, so the other solution is another small possibility, a fraction of the possibility is maybe he never existed, and maybe he will spontaneously at some point exist. So you ultimately kind of have four possible outcomes that could happen. So it's almost like it's a four-sided coin. We don't know what it's going to really land on. But in reality, I propose it's actually a more of a one-sided coin flip and more of a two-sided coin flip. Either he always did exist, or he never has or never will. So it's either he always has and always will, or he never has and never will. That's my proposal. Our uncertainty doesn't create a third possibility. We don't know describes the state of our knowledge, not necessarily the state of reality. So when an atheist says God doesn't exist, they're proposing they've seen what the coin has landed on, which only reality itself holds the answer. So they're basically proposing that they are reality itself. How are you going to propose your reality itself? See, they wonder why most people subconsciously don't take that serious. We don't take them serious because they propose they are reality itself. They might as well be proposing that they are reality itself, because only reality itself holds the answer. Okay, so let's continue. We don't know. Okay, so we know an atheist says God doesn't exist. And when a believer says God exists, the deeper question I'm asking both of them is, has the coin actually landed for you? If you hold that answer, you are proposing that you are reality itself. So you cannot propose that answer either way without stating that is your guess. You must state, that's my guess. You should state, that is my best guess. That is how it is supposed to be stated. You state things the way they're supposed to be stated. That is only your guess. Because otherwise, you are basically proposing you are reality itself. So either way you guess, if you guess God exists, or if you guess God doesn't exist, if you don't state that information, you're proposing that you are reality itself. But you don't even realize that you're stating that you're proposing your reality itself. That's why it's important to know how to say things, how to prove your point, make your point, state your opinion. You're not stating your opinions correctly. So no matter if somebody proposes they know God exists or they know God doesn't exist, that is only a guess unless they just so happen to be reality itself. So are you reality itself? All of a sudden, you're reality itself. Because only reality itself knows that answer, holds that answer. You can't say you hold that answer unless you can state you are reality itself. But if you are reality itself, that would basically make you God. So you're proposing, either way you guess, you're basically saying you're God. You hold the answer. So how are you saying that you hold the answer, but you're not God? Only God holds that answer, or reality itself holds that answer. If God exists, He is reality itself. What the hell are you people getting so motherfucking confused about? Because you are not learning language. You're not becoming smarter. You're not as smart as you think you actually are. You propose you're fucking God but you're not fucking God. Stop proposing that you're fucking God. So an atheist might as well... Why the hell do you think no one takes that shit serious? They're basically proposing that they're fucking God, but yet they don't even believe God exists. But all of a sudden they propose they're fucking God. They don't even realize that they're proposing that they're fucking God. Because they're too stupid. You're just too fucking stupid. And if the answer really is B, how would humanity ever know when the coin finally landed? One important correction to your original wording. I wouldn't say one side is virtually impossible to land on. The analogy itself doesn't establish the probability that God exists. What it does illustrate very well is the difference between what is true and what humans can know, especially the symmetry between potentially observing existence and conclusively establishing non-existence. That makes your argument much harder to knock down. All right, let me take this a little bit deeper. Yes, but I would make one important distinction so the argument stays logically defeasible. A person can hold a correct answer without being reality itself. The stronger, exactly, I could be right, and that doesn't mean that I'm God. Because I propose I must be right, but I'm only guessing that I'm right. Because we're not going to know that I'm right until we know that I'm right. The stronger claim is that a person cannot make their certainty create reality. Reality is what ultimately determines whether their answer is correct. You could phrase your idea like this. Here's where the paradox gets even deeper. I believe a paradox is something that you can't really explain. Here's where the paradox gets even deeper. If I say God exists, I am making a claim about reality. If you say God does not exist, you are also making a claim about reality. Either way, it's a claim. But neither one of us gets to decide reality. We can think, we can argue, we can observe, we can gather evidence, but ultimately, reality holds the answer. That's the difference between saying, I think I know the answer, and acting as though my answer determines what reality is. See, atheists expect that their answer has determined what reality is. They expect that it has been determined what reality is, but it has not been determined. It is yet to be determined. That's what a paradox is. It's undetermined. Paradoxes are undetermined. Because if your personal certainty alone were enough to determine the ultimate truth of existence, you'd basically be treating your own mind like it had complete access to reality itself. That'd basically make you fucking God. You'd be fucking God, and then the problem would be solved. Fucking hallelujah, there's a fucking God. You wouldn't be so fucked in the head anyway. Suppose God actually exists and is not merely something inside reality, but is the eternal foundation or source of reality. Then God wouldn't simply be another object somewhere in the universe waiting for us to find him, Under that definition, God would be connected to the very reason there is a reality to investigate in the first place. So the question becomes much bigger than that. Where is God? It becomes, what is reality? Why does reality exist? And what ultimately grounds it? And here's my favorite part. If I say I know God exists, challenge me. If you say I know God doesn't exist, I'll challenge you too. Because neither one of us gets promoted to supreme administrator of reality. It basically, that makes you God if you know the answer. But how the hell do you know the answer to the paradox without any solution? Yeah, maybe you have the answer to the paradox, but not without a solution. What is the solution? I've yet to see an atheist propose a valid solution. Reality doesn't become true because you believe it. Reality doesn't become false because you doubt it. Reality is whatever reality actually is. And if God really is the eternal foundation of that reality, then maybe we've been asking the question backward. Instead of asking, is God somewhere inside reality, maybe the question is reality itself dependent upon what we call God? The last distinction is important because God equals reality itself is one particular philosophical position, close to forms of pantheism. Classical theism usually says God is the ultimate ground or creator of reality, but isn't identical to the physical universe. Your argument can leave both possibilities open while still making the point you are after. A paradox is an idea, statement, or situation that seems to lead to a contradiction, impossibility, or bizarre conclusion, especially when the reasoning initially appears reasonable. The word comes from Greek roots, meaning roughly contrary, however you pronounce that, to expectation or accepted opinion. The simplest way to understand it. A paradox makes your brain go, wait, both of these things seem to make sense, but how can they both make sense? A famous example is the liar paradox. This statement is false. If the statement is true, then what it says must be correct, meaning it's false. But if it's false, then its claim that it's false is correct, which seems to make it true. So you get true, false, true, false. That's a paradox. How it relates to what we've been discussing. There's an important distinction. Something being unknown isn't automatically a paradox. For example, does extraterrestrial life exist somewhere in the universe? We might not know the answer, but reality could still have a perfectly ordinary answer. Yes or no? The interesting philosophical tension you've been describing is more like reality has an answer, but a human observer may not have a way to obtain absolute certainty about that answer. And then you can turn that back onto yourself. How can I know that my reasoning about reality is correct when my only instrument for judging my reasoning is another part of my own reasoning? That starts getting into genuine philosophical territory involving epistemology, which is basically the study of knowledge itself. What does it mean to know something? How do you know that you know it? How certain can you actually be? And the ultimate noodle baker is, if you need proof that your proof is reliable, do you then need proof that proof is reliable too? And who proves the proof of the proof? It's normally self-evident. It's something, seeing is believing. You'll believe it when you see it. that kind of infinite regress is exactly where philosophy starts getting really interesting. Hold on, let me go start preheating the oven. I'm gonna cook a pizza. Oh, for God's sake. All right. So if I'm debating with an atheist, and they always try to say, the Bible is just a book, that basically negates the entire debate, because that isn't necessarily what the debate is always about. They expect that that is what the debate is always about. They think that a fallacy validates their answer. See, that's the problem with these atheists. They're trying to prove a point without actually proving a point. And you try to explain it to them, you even try to do it nicely, and they just don't listen. They don't fucking listen. They never fucking listen. It's like they're just fucking rockheads, bro. All right. Yes, the key is to separate different debates that people often collapse into one. If an atheist says the Bible doesn't prove God exists, you don't actually need to defend the Bible unless your argument was God exists because the Bible says so. You could respond like this: you're answering a different question than the one I'm asking. See, they're always trying to get you to answer a question you didn't even ask. I did not even ask that fucking question, but they act like I have made that sort of proposition. Some people make that proposition, but not everybody. They act like everybody makes that same proposition. That's my argument. That's not my proposition. If my argument were, the Bible says God exists, therefore God exists, then absolutely challenge whether the Bible is reliable evidence. But that's not necessarily the argument. The philosophical question is, does some form of God, creator, necessary being, ultimate mind, or foundation of reality actually exist? That's my question to them. And I want them to answer yes or no. Do you know the answer or not? Because they act like they know the answer. So that's my question. They act like I've asked some sort of other question, but I have not. They assume they know what my question is. Okay, let's continue. The question exists independently of Christianity and independently of the Bible. And then they always try to say, oh, there's a million gods. What makes your God God? All right, let's continue. Imagine every Bible on earth disappeared tomorrow. What would that suddenly prove? There is no creator? No. Likewise, finding a contradiction, historical error, moral problem, mistranslation, or confusing verse in the Bible would challenge a particular claim about the Bible. It would not automatically demonstrate, therefore, no God of any kind exists. That's a completely separate conclusion. Think about the logical difference. This religious book contains something incorrect. Therefore, no creator or God exists anywhere in reality. That's basically their logic. Simple minded. Like, how simple fucking minded are you people? That conclusion doesn't automatically follow. You just changed debates halfway through. There are actually several different questions. Does any God exist? If God exists, what is God? Did this God interact with humanity? Is Christianity's description of God correct? Is the Bible historically, religiously reliable? Does a particular Bible verse make sense? Those questions are connected, but they are not identical. If we're debating question number 1, and you find a questionable Bible verse, you haven't necessarily answered question number 1. That is exactly what I am trying to explain to them. It's like that shit don't register. Like, it's almost like nothing fucking registers in their fucking brain. They got like one fucking brain cell pumping. You potentially raise an argument about questions 4, 5, and 6, and I'm completely willing to debate those too, but first, stay in the same debate. If the question, because they act like that is the solution. I've found the solution. Okay, well, if you claim to have found the solution, prove your point. How is that the solution? What makes that the solution? If the question is whether some ultimate intelligence or God exists, then let's debate that proposition. Cosmology, causation, consciousness, necessary existence, fine-tuning, the nature of reality itself. Then, if we establish that there are good reasons for believing some kind of God exists, we can move to the next question. Which concept of God, if any, best fits reality? And then the Bible becomes extremely relevant. But don't ask me to prove the existence of God using a Bible verse when my argument for God's existence wasn't based on a Bible verse in the first place. They assume that the Bible verse holds the answer. No wonder they don't fucking... Oh gosh, how simple-minded are they? Like, they got a brain the size of a fucking peanut, bro. It's barely operating. One thing I'd avoid saying is that atheists always do this. Yeah, I don't mean to say it like that, but it's like most of them do. Some atheists specifically argue against Christianity, in which case criticizing the Bible is directly relevant. Others arguing against theism generally. So everybody debates a little bit different. I tend to find that most atheists are very shallow. I can't say all of them are, but most of them are. Same with believers in God. A lot of believers in God, very shallow. I think it's just human nature to be very shallow, to not be very good with explaining and proving your point. No matter what side you're on, everybody's not very good at doing it. The clean debate move is simply, which proposition are we debating? If it's the Christian Bible is divinely inspired, Bible contradictions are relevant. If it's no God of any kind exists, showing a problematic Bible passage by itself doesn't establish that conclusion. Just because they found one contradiction in the Bible doesn't provide the solution. That's not a solution. That doesn't answer the question. That's the logical distinction you want to hammer home. So it's like they assume they know what everyone's question is without actually hearing the question in the first place. Exactly. That is a much cleaner way to describe the problem. Everybody does it. Believers in God, we assume that we know their question. They assume we know their question. We need to hear each other's questions and answer the question directly. What is your question? I'll answer your question. Now answer my question. Answer each other's questions. Don't propose that they have asked certain questions without asking certain questions. What is your question? Goes both ways. We should ask each other, what is your question? Okay, here's my answer to your question. Now, so it should go back and forth. You ask a question, now I ask a question. Back and forth. What is your question? Well, what is my question? This is what we're all questioning. This is what we're both questioning. Not what we assume each other are questioning. We ask each other, well, what are you questioning? We should ask each other, what are you questioning? The mistake isn't necessarily that their answer is wrong. It's that they're basically answering an indirect question. The mistake is answering a question that was never actually asked. That's why everyone gets into these arguments, is everyone is answering questions that have not even been necessarily even asked. Nobody asked that question. So it's better to ask these sorts of questions one question at a time, so that we're actually answering the question that has been asked. Don't answer all these other questions nobody has even asked. Both sides. You're a believer in God. Don't assume they're asking questions. Same with them. Don't assume we're asking questions without hearing, what is our question? What is the question? Nobody is sitting there with enough patience to listen to each other on what is each other's question. We're assuming that's their question. Don't assume that that's each other's question without knowing that's their question. It goes both ways. Both sides are assuming, hey, this is the question. No, that's the question. No, that's the question. Answer one question at a time. Both of you, believers in God and non-believers in God, answer each other's questions one question at a time and make sure that that is the question that they are asking. Because they're acting like that was my question. That wasn't even my fucking question. Both sides are guilty of this shit. You're both not listening to each other. For example, do you think some form of creator or ultimate intelligence could exist? That is a reasonable question. We can sit and wait. Let's hear the answer. What's your answer? What's my answer? What's my guess? What's your guess? Because it's not like our answer is the answer. Our answer is more like, that's my guess. That's my guess. Why don't we state that? Just state, that's my guess. It's not that fucking hard to say, that's my guess. Your guess is your answer, but your answer doesn't make it the answer. Doesn't propose it's the answer. Doesn't propose it's the solution. Reality itself holds the solution, holds the answer. You do not hold the answer. I do not hold the answer. Nobody holds the answer. That's what I have been sent to reveal to everybody. Nobody can sit there claiming you hold the answer. You do not hold the answer unless you have the solution. Provide the solution. If you provide the solution, now you hold the answer. That's what I've been trying to explain, is I have provided a solution that most likely proves I hold the answer. So I propose I must be right. I must be the one that holds the solution because I have provided the solution. I have provided my theory. Where has anybody else provided their theory? Where has anybody else provided a solution? Never have I heard an atheist provide a valid solution, in my own opinion. All right? So you state it correctly. In my own opinion, I have never seen an atheist provide a valid solution. I'm entitled to my own opinion. That's my own opinion. You can't say my opinion is wrong. All you can say is you don't agree with my opinion. You don't think my opinion makes sense. That is a valid way to state your argument. You can't state shit the way you're stating it unless you're stating shit correctly. You gotta state shit correctly. Nobody is stating shit correctly besides me. I'm the first fucking person to start stating this shit fucking correctly. And I'm demonstrating how you state shit correctly. Because God, I was sent by God. As far as I know, I'm the solution to this gigantic paradox, this gigantic problem. I'm demonstrating how you're supposed to do it. Pay attention. You provide a solution. Where have they provided a solution? What makes that the solution? You believe that your solution is the solution. That's all it means. That doesn't mean your solution is the actual solution. All it means is that your solution makes sense to you. All right? So just because the solution makes sense to you doesn't mean it's a valid solution. How are you able to prove that your solution is correct? That is my question. You cannot prove your solution is correct because I've already basically proved my solution is correct. So how are both of our solutions correct? Do you see the problem? Apparently, these atheists have provided the solution without providing the solution. That's my own opinion. Where is their solution? They don't have a solution. I propose I have the solution. I'm proving to everybody my point. I'm proving to everybody my solution makes sense. It's still my opinion that I must be correct. So I've stated that though. I've stated I must be correct because my solution adds up. My solution makes sense. I've explained why my solution makes sense. I've gave examples how my solution makes sense. I've gave examples how your solution doesn't make sense. You have yet to do that. You have not provided anything that contradicts my solution. How are you able to contradict my solution? I propose my solution cannot be contradicted. Therefore, it must be the solution. I haven't said that this is proven to be the answer. I've stated that it must be the solution. This must be the solution. My best guess is that I found the solution. This must be the solution. Because I have provided you with all the information to my guess. You have not provided anything towards your guess. You haven't provided anything towards your solution. Where is it? Where is your solution? You're missing the whole math part. You're forgetting to fucking write the solution down. Where has anyone ever seen an atheist write down a proposed solution that must be right? I have never seen it. Never have I seen it. I've looked, I've observed, I've dictated, I've judged. To my best guess, that is not a solution. They have not provided a solution. So what's so hard about providing your solution? Why can't you provide a fucking solution? Where the fuck is your fucking solution. At least I have a solution. At least I've proposed a solution. At least I've explained my solution. At least my solution makes fucking sense. How does your solution make fucking sense? How the fuck is your solution ever gonna make sense if my solution makes sense? Do you people get it? If my solution doesn't make sense, now you're probably gonna have a better solution. How is anyone ever gonna have a better solution than what I have provided? Until they provide it. They have not provided that solution. I provided the solution. You haven't even heard my argument. I'm continuing on. You haven't even heard my argument yet, but you're already arguing against the argument you expect me to make. That's basically assuming the conclusion of someone else's argument before they've presented the argument. If they attack a weaker or different argument instead of your actual one, that can become a straw man. A really good line for your live stream would be, before you prove my argument wrong, shouldn't you probably figure out what my argument actually is? Hello? How are you going to prove my argument wrong? But you don't even know what my argument actually is. Or even more pointed, you already have the answer ready, but you don't even know what my question is yet. How do you know your answer answers my question? That's how I view an atheist. That's how they come at me. They act like we come at them like that, but they come at us more like that. That's my opinion. That's always just an opinion. Of course, when the hell would it not be an opinion? Like Captain Obvious, do I really need to state that? That actually connects perfectly with your earlier theme. Do you understand the other person's point? Or do you only understand the version of their point that exists inside your own head? Exactly. They also argue there's hundreds of different gods people believe in. What makes your God God? But that was not always even proposed as the question entirely. They assume the question is always something like that without hearing the question. Yes, that's another example where two different questions can be blended together. If you're asking the broad philosophical question, does God, some creator, necessary being, ultimate intelligence, or foundation of reality exist? And someone immediately responds, there are thousands of gods. Why is your God the real God? They've jumped ahead. A clean response would be, hold on, you haven't even heard my question yet. So they haven't even heard the question. I didn't ask which religion has the correct God. I didn't ask, is Christianity correct? I didn't ask, is Christianity correct? I didn't ask, is Zeus real instead of Allah? I didn't even necessarily ask, is my God the correct God? I might simply be asking, does some ultimate intelligence, creator, necessary being, or fundamental mind behind reality exist at all? That's question number one. If the answer is no, explain why. If the answer might be yes, then we can move to question number two. What is it? Then question number three. Does any religion describe it accurately? Then question number four. Which religion, if any, has the strongest case? But you can't skip question one, teleport to question four, answer that question and then act like you answered question 1. That's like me asking, is somebody inside that house? And you responding, there are billions of people. Which person? Bro, I don't know yet. That's why I asked if somebody was in the house first. The existence question comes before the identity question. And here's the bigger problem. If you've already prepared your response before you've even heard my actual question, are you debating me? Or are you debating an imaginary argument inside your own head? Yes, that is an atheist. Well, both people. I am a believer in God debating against a non-believer. So I will fight on the side of the believer of God. I can't say that they're all right. I can't, but same with an atheist. I can't say that they're all wrong, but I definitely can't say that they're all right either. There is one nonce worth keeping because it'll make you stronger in an actual debate. There are many proposed gods. Can be a legitimate objection. If you've already claimed that a specific God exists, for example, if you say Christianity is definitely true, asking why Christianity rather than another religion is completely relevant. See, that's not my question. I don't have those questions towards Christianity because I know that some of them are contradicting themselves, and that's not necessarily the question I have a question about. I don't have questions about Christians that don't have relevant answers. That my question is not for them because I don't care about a Christian that doesn't have a relevant answer. Why do you think I don't question them? Because their belief doesn't pertain to me. If they don't have a relevant answer to the question, that's their problem. Well, how is that my problem? I have no relation to somebody that is proposing the wrong questions. I don't claim them as my own. All right, if you're a Christian and you're providing the wrong questions, wrong answers, you're part of the problem. I agree. Anybody asking the wrong questions and providing the wrong answers, you're part of the problem. They can be part of the problem, but that's not who my question is for. I'm not questioning them. If I notice that a Christian is wrong, I already notice they're wrong. I already know they're wrong. But that's not who I'm debating. That's not who I'm questioning. If I wanted to question them, I would question them. I have no desire to question a Christian that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. There are a lot of Christians that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but that's not who the fuck I'm debating. But if you're only discussing whether any God-like foundation of reality exists, religious diversity doesn't by itself settle that first question. The short version for a live stream is probably the strongest. You keep asking me which God before we've even established whether there is a God. You're answering question number 4 while I'm still asking question number 1. So think about that for a minute, guys. I'm going to end this live stream to keep it separate from my Overwatch stream. I'm going to go eat, and I'm going to get back on.